Welcome back, my students, to another episode of Comic Class. And in today's video, guys, we're going to be looking at Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Return to New York story arc. And yeah, so if you haven't already, go check out the previous video, which we covered the Shredder Strikes Back story arc, which is a fan favorite. This is the events that take place after that arc. And yeah, so if you don't want to be spoiled on some of the plot points, or maybe you probably wouldn't understand some of the plot points that we'll be dealing with this arc because you haven't read the last arc, go check that out before you check out this video. Without further ado, guys, if you've already done that, enjoy the video. And yeah, without further ado, let's jump right into the video. Let's go. So the story pretty much starts off a year later from the Shredder Strikes Back story arc that we covered last time. And yeah, so this arc pretty much starts off with Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, and Michelangelo basically on a hiatus for doing ninja work in New York City, and they're still living on Casey's grandmother's farmhouse. And yeah, basically Raphael has kind of like lost it, and he's tired of hiding out. It's already been a year. So basically him and Leonardo basically get into it and basically say that, you know, that they can't go on with this, basically that it's been a year and they need to fight the Shredder in the Foot and take care of him once and for all. Now this is where Leonardo basically tells Raphael that he's not going to go out there to fight the Foot by himself, and he's going to wait for Leonardo's orders to basically go as a team to take on the Shredder and the Foot. But this is where Raphael basically calls Leonardo a coward and basically letting his PTSD kind of run his life, and this gets them into a kind of confrontation with each other where they take on each other one-on-one with their weapons, and then eventually into a fist fight. And yeah, it's a really cool action scene between Raphael and Leonardo. This is going to be very important for a plot point that happens later on. But yeah, so basically Raphael actually wins this sparring match between the two, and Raphael basically takes his leave to head to New York City to take care of the Foot and the Shredder by himself, because he's just had it with hiding all the time, especially since considering this is an entire year after the events of the Shredder Strikes Back. So I can understand Raphael's frustration, but at the same time you do understand Leonardo's, you know, unwillingness to kind of go back and fight, just he's afraid, you know, as Raphael says. Now Raphael basically heads off into New York City, where you get to see him kind of like go through some of the sewers, trying to figure out where his old hideout was. This is where Raphael basically takes on the Foot. They're kind of infesting the sewers, kind of like, I guess, waiting for the turtles to, you know, come back. At least that's what it seems like. And yeah, we get a lot of cool action scenes with Raphael basically fighting against the Foot, and eventually this like creature comes up from the sewers water and basically shows himself to Leonardo, and we'll get revealed on what he is in a little bit. So basically Leonardo, I guess, is talked to by Donatello and Michelangelo, and they all decide, you know, to head out to try to find Raphael before he gets himself killed. So they finally arrive to their old hideout, and this is where Raphael tells them that he's been waiting for them, that he knew that they would come eventually looking for him, but that he actually has a little bit of help. This will reveal to the creature that came out of the sewer water, which is a Triceraton that actually survived the battle with the TCRI creatures, it seems. And yeah, so this Triceraton is actually named Zog, and Zog actually has like some sort of PTSD going on. He basically doesn't even really have a functioning brain anymore, and basically just thinks that he's actually serving his republic still. So it's pretty cool. Now we get to see that Zog basically takes the turtles to like this underground Foot base, and basically they engage in a battle with the Foot. And with this battle comes the knowledge that Zod basically led them to a base that had all the information that they needed to find where the Shredder actually is held up, and it's on some sort of city block, basically this giant building. And yeah, so they basically go in this building with the knowledge that this is where the final battle is probably going to take place. And yeah, so Zod basically is not the type to hold back and, you know, be quiet, because Leonardo basically was going to have them go in and be stealthy and try to find the Shredder before they got into a fight with the entire Foot Force. But this isn't how it happened, because Zod just goes head first into a battle And yeah, overall, you know, round by round, basically, as they go through the floors, they're seeing different foot soldiers that they're having to take on. And it's really interesting. We get, again, a lot of action with the turtles, you know, using their iconic weapons, with Zod basically using his gun that he has from his Triceratops army days, basically. And yeah, so they're basically fighting off the foot soldiers. They're shooting as much as they can. Eventually they arrive in a sort of vehicle. They find a vehicle and they head to where the Shredder should be. Eventually the vehicle gets shot down though, and it leads into a giant firefight with Zod basically taking on a ton of foot soldiers with machine guns, or at least that's what it seems like, because they're shooting like rapid fire. And yeah, Zod and the turtles basically again take on these foot soldiers, this whole army basically. And Zod's doing pretty well considering all he has is a firearm with him, you know, his Triceratops gun, I believe. And yeah, so basically Zod takes on a lot of damage. I mean, he took like a huge beating from all these machine guns, and basically we get to see like these type of Shredder beings, you know, slowly get revealed when Zod is heading towards the entrance, believing that he's finally found where the Shredder should be for the turtles. And this is where Zod gets completely just cut up by the Shredder mutations, and this will reveal to the Shredder mutations in full panel. And it's an amazing picture showing that these are not the original Shredder, but some type of mutated freaks. And this leads us to the final issue of the arc. And yeah, so the turtles basically face up, I guess you could say, these Shredder hybrids, these mutant hybrids. And it's really cool. They engage in battle with these hybrids and basically realize that these are no, slow. They're not slow and they're not weak either, basically. So like they're having a hard time taking these on. Now, while this is going on and they're having this huge battle with Michelangelo, Donatello, Raphael, and Leonardo taking on these Shredder people, we get to see that Raphael basically goes up and takes on some of, I guess, Shredder's elite guard, and almost gets himself killed when Leonardo heads up there to, you know, take on this elite guard as well, with both of them branding katanas, which is really cool. Eventually, you know, Leonardo basically fights back and he actually gains the upper hand and defeats these elite guard. But these aren't like the main elite guard that we see, I believe, in the Shredder Strikes Back story, and that we will see in the final arc, which is City at War in the next video. These are like, I think, a lower branch, so it makes sense that Leonardo would fight against these guys and win. But this is important for his development. Now, this is where we get a really good development for Raphael's character. Raphael basically says his faults and what Splinter actually sees in him, in the rage and not being able to control himself. It basically says that he's giving the honor, basically, and the duty of destroying the Shredder to Leonardo. And this is a huge moment for Raphael's character. If you've read since the first issue, I mean, him and Leonardo always kind of like butt heads. So it's really cool to see Raphael do this and kind of like leave it to his brother, you know, and not doing it all by himself. And in that same, you know, discussion that he's having with Leonardo, he basically says that he will go protect Donatello and Michelangelo, showing that he's going to protect his brothers as well. He's not going to do nothing, but he's going to leave Shredder for Leonardo. He feels like he has the best chance in taking him on, and it's just an amazing moment. Probably the best story moment in this arc, because it shows development for Raphael's character, especially if you've read the Raphael one-shot, which I will cover on the channel pretty soon. So while this is going on, Leonardo heads up to the rooftop because he knows that the Shredder is going to be waiting for him there, and we get to see that the Shredder is actually branding his armor and getting ready to fight Leonardo. It's really cool. And Leonardo's just, you know, beating the people up on the way up to the roof. And this is where we're shown that Michelangelo and Donatello are basically almost getting gunned down by these foot soldiers using machine guns. And yeah, and Raphael basically is trying to figure out how to save his brothers. Now finally, Leonardo makes his way to the rooftop, and this is where he calls out the Shredder to have their final battle. And the Shredder finally reveals himself and basically shows that he was actually revived with some type of mutation and worms. It's pretty weird. It's kind of like comic book logic, you know, it's not too realistic, but you know, it's comics, so who cares. Basically, so he has been revived, Orokusaki, basically. So he's gonna have his final battle with Leonardo. Now we get to see that Raphael basically gets this giant machine that was, I guess, laying around in the space, and he uses it to save his brothers from these machine gun foot soldiers, which is really cool to see, you know, Raphael using some technology and not Donatello for once. It's really cool. Now we get to see the final battle goes underway with the Shredder fighting against Leonardo in a katana match, and most of it is fighting with weapons, which makes a lot of sense because they are masters of their craft. And it's really cool to see Leonardo going one-on-one with the Shredder, and there's a ton of cool action panels showing their sword battle. And you know, there's not that many sword battles, I think, in comics that are very well known. One of them being Batman and Ra's al Ghul, I know is a very well known fight that I personally haven't read, but I have heard about. But this has to be one of the best ones I've seen so far. Just in choreography and just how much the fight evolves, it's very good. Now we get to see that Raphael basically gets one of the rocket launchers that was laying around and uses it to shoot the water main pipe, and basically has the entire thing explode, kind of like just like making the whole building unstable. Now the battle is basically still going on with Leonardo and the Shredder, and they're basically fighting it out, and eventually the Shredder gains the upper hand. It's about to kill Leonardo when the giant water main breaking basically causes the whole building to kind of like shake and collapse to an extent, and this kind of like makes the Shredder lose his footing and basically gives Leonardo another chance to fight against the Shredder. But instead of, you know, fighting it out, they decide, let's just, you know, go at each other one last time, and whoever's faster will win. And this is where we see that Leonardo basically cuts off the Shredder's head in their final slash with each other, their final clash with each other, yes, you could say. And yeah, it's one of the most iconic panels that Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird ever did. Just very well written, and, you know, very good illustrated panel. And you know, I've been reading this off of the TMNT Black and White collections, and there's a lot of information from Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, you know, like doing interviews or some type of little like dialogues for each of the issues. And when they were talking about this issue, this panel, they said was one of their favorite, if not their most iconic panels, and I have to agree, it's just very well done. After this, we basically see that the Turtles basically defeated the Shredder mutations, it seems, and basically we get to see that Leonardo basically takes the Shredder's body, and he says they have one final job to do now that they have avenged Hamato Yoshi for the final time, and that leads us to the end of the story arc with them burning Shredder's body, basically putting him on a raft to float down the river, kind of like an ancient samurai slash Japanese tradition, I believe, in showing honor or something like that. I'm not too versed in Japanese tradition, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that that has something to do with their tradition. And we get to see the Shredder's helmet on like some sort of katana, and yeah, so it's pretty cool. I'm thinking that that's one of Leonardo's katanas that he put the Shredder's helmet on, but that's the end of the art. You know, it's a good send off to the Shredder, and yeah, he won't be coming back. Overall, the, you know, Return to New York arc, you know, story arc is really good, guys. I mean, this is an arc that had a lot of character development for Raphael and Leonardo, basically, you know, for those two turtles the most. It had some really cool scenes, like Raphael actually using technology, you know, slash machinery, something you don't really see other than Donatello is. The action scenes were very well done, very well choreographed. We got that awesome panel with Leonardo decapitating the Shredder. And, you know, overall, it's just a really good read. Very fast read as well, because a lot of it is action-based. As most of the Mirage arcs are, they have a very good blend of action and dialogue, and they're not very wordy. So you really can breeze through these stories, you know, really fast. Probably like in 30 minutes each. But, you know, overall, you know, Return to New York story arc is fantastic, and I definitely recommend it. As I said in the beginning of the video, link will be in the description down below to check out the issues for this story arc on Comixology. It's always good to support it legally, and, you know, it helps the comic industry grow, so I do suggest you go do that. And overall, I do recommend getting the TMNT Black and White collections, because they have all of these cool, you know, dialogues and interviews about each issue. I mean, it's just awesome insight to Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, and them just giving their thoughts on each issue they did of this story. It's fantastic, and also what they thought of the people that did like those filler issues as well. Fantastic stuff. But that's gonna be all, guys. Until next video, I will be covering the final part of the Mirage original run with City at War, which is another fan favorite arc that has been readapted, I believe, in the 2011 series. But I can't wait to jump into that series after the Mirage stuff, because man, I've heard a lot of good things about 2011, the IDW series, so I can't wait to jump into that. But yeah, until next video when we cover, you know, the City at War arc, that's gonna be it. So God bless you, and until the next lesson, keep on reading.
I am who I'm meant to be. I am who I'm meant to be. Over and out again. My future needed clarity, so I could see how you